business. Okay.
Hi, Lawrence. Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Good to see you, Rajesh, and congratulations on your trip to Spain that I hear about.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
If everybody doesn't know, Rajesh is going to represent India in badminton.
Yeah.
He tells me he's a very good badminton player, and I think that's the proof. You get to go to Spain to represent India.
Yeah, I will be participating in World Championship. It's going to held in Spain, Huelva, from 28th November to 4th December. So I will be representing India, and hopefully I will try to do my
Good
best.
luck. Good luck, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, we are live on Facebook and recording. We are ready to start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome all. I'm Professor Manoj Kumar, Director CRC and Sales at Education Centre Australia, ECA and London Metropolitan University, and I will be your host for today's CEO Bit, followed my fellow colleague, Mr. Luciano, as a co-host. Before we get started, a few generic guidelines for all the attendees to follow. All the participants are requested to ask questions through the question answer chat box down below, and panel members will review these questions at the end of the session and answer them for you. Please keep your questions short and precise. As we know that today's business atmosphere is driving transformation at an extraordinary level, and the existing situation of uncertainty played a crucial role and pushing organization towards considering transformation, business agility to adapt to external variation diligently, using technology and data in new ways. That is the universal demand for the new ideas, skills, and opportunities. Hence, businesses recognizes that the continuous learning must keep up with the changing technology and scenario. Albeit, companies need individuals who can continually learn and adapt to meet the exigencies of the business and its stakeholders. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by business leaders, senior experts, and seniors management from the ECA, London Metropolitan University, and various other prestigious organizations to hold a panel discussion on business transformation and driving effective organizational change with evolving a skill set. The CEO's takeaway. Without taking much time, I would like to invite my co-host, Mr. Luciano, to keep the proceeding forward. Over to you, Luciano.
Thank you very much, Professor Manoj. Very warm greetings to our guests and participants to today's session. So my name is Luciano D'Ambrosi, the PEO and General Manager for the ECA Professional Year and Internships. I wanted to thank my colleagues, Professor Manoj Kumar and Mr. Rajesh Singh, the CEO and Director of ECA India. It is indeed an honour to co-host today's stimulating master webinar, CEO Meet among such an esteemed group of industry and academic thought leaders. I also wanted to acknowledge London Metropolitan University, which has been a wonderful addition to our extended offerings within the ECA group. So today we have some brief presentations prior to the main event. The main event is really an informative panel discussion. So first of all, I wanted to introduce Mr. Rajesh Singh, who is a Director and CEO of ECA Global India. Rajesh, in the time that I've known him over almost 4 years, he is an inspirational and incredibly dedicated CEO who basically runs a very fine team in ECA India. Sorry, I've lost my connection here. ECA India serves as an education centre for international students from the subcontinent region who are seeking to study Australian courses delivered by the ECA group of colleges in Australia, or Australian higher education courses delivered through partners in India. Rajesh and his team are collaborating more and more with our teams and programs in Australia to create innovative and outstanding courses for students in the subcontinent. Rajesh will give a little bit of an overview of ECA Group and ECA India. Our second presenter, I have the pleasure of working very closely with Mr. Loren de Souza, Business Operations Manager of Vet Group and ECA Professional Year for the past 3 years. Prior to working with ECA, Loren worked for 12 years with VFS Global in regional operations for Australia, New Zealand, and Asia Pacific. He was country manager for VFS Global. Before this, he was marketing manager for McDonald's India, based in Mumbai. Loren will give an overview of the most exciting suite of tools we are about to launch that will give all participants a genuine advantage in becoming much more employable. Now, I want to give just a brief introduction to our esteemed panelists. So first of all, just bear with me. I wanted to introduce you to our moderator. Sorry.
Bala.
Yes. Bala Subramanian Sundararaman.
Yeah, Bala is good.
I hope I've got the pronunciation right.
Yeah, the mouthful.
Founder and CEO of Natural Minds Digital Systems. Bala has a very impressive career. He's formerly a global managing director for the healthcare and government sector at Accenture, managing a portfolio of over $2 billion in US. He has over 27 years of experience serving large clients globally. Bala quit his corporate role to pursue his passion, and it was to devise and build a technology solution within healthcare that is accessible and affordable to all. He's been a passionate advocate and thought leader in the tech industry, particularly in the healthcare industry. In 2018, he conducted a national conference on the future of technology at Delhi. In 2019, the government of Punjab honoured Bala with an award for Distinguished Leader in Technology Innovation during the Punjab Innovation and Technology Summit. We're very privileged to have Bala with us. Dr. Aquil Busrai is a university rank holder and gold medalist from one of India's finest management schools, XLRI. He has a postgraduate degree in law, an advanced diploma in training and development, besides his PhD. He's also currently pursuing a second PhD and a master's degree in anthropology. Dr. Busrai has acquired 48 plus years industry management experience, having worked in various HR roles with Unilever in Kenya and India. He was Executive Director, HR Motorola for Asia Pacific. He worked with Shell Malaysia as Director, Human Resources and Managing Director of Shell People Services Asia. He was also Executive Director, Human Resources for IBM India. For the past 11 years, he's been CEO of Aquil Busrai Consulting, focusing on the key areas of executive coaching, HR strategy, and leadership development to companies and individuals. He's a fellow of All India Management Association and Institute of Directors. Dr. Busrai is a visiting faculty at Berkeley Executive Management Program and UCLA Postgraduate Program in Management, besides Indian Institute of Management. Just for good measure, he is also a keen student of non-verbal communication and is in fact writing a book on body language, which I find is very interesting. Another member of our panel is Mr. Ashish Chandra, Chief Executive Officer and MD of Airtel Sri Lanka. He has over 22 years telecom experience with a distinguished career setting up new businesses, financial turnarounds, rapid market share growth, mergers and acquisitions, and multiple industry innovations. His current role with Airtel Sri Lanka has a mandate to accelerate Airtel's growth in the Sri Lankan market through leveraging best-in-class network technologies and digital platforms. His previous two roles include 2 years as CEO and business head of Vodafone Idea, which was a merger of Vodafone India and ID Cellular to create India's largest telco. And prior to the merger, he was 5 years as CEO and business head of Vodafone India Limited. Then we have Mr. Vikash Marwar, the CEO of Lumax Auto Technologies. It's an automotive conglomerate. He has post-qualification experience of around 3 decades, primarily within the Indian automotive sector, manufacturing and infrastructure. He is listed among India's top 5 chief marketing officers by World Brand Congress. He has a unique career background with experience working with global and Indian brands in marketing and operations, including Varroc, Sona Koyo, Steering Systems, Oryx Auto, Hertz India, JK Tyres, and Goodyear. He continues to serve on the industry body ACMA and is widely respected in the PR, marketing, media, and auto fraternity. The final member of our stellar panel, Professor Lawrence Pratchett, was until August 2021 Pro Vice Chancellor at the University of Canberra, having moved to that position after 7 years as the university's Dean of the Faculty of Business, Government and Law. Prior to coming to Australia, he was head of the Department of Public Policy at De Montfort University in the UK and co-founder of its world-leading local government's research unit. In exciting news for the professor, he will be moving to Mumbai in early 2022 and is currently engaging with ECA in exploring EdTech opportunities and developing partnerships with Indian universities. He has a PhD in political science from De Montfort University. He's ranked in the top 10% of political scientists in Australia by publication. Professor Pratchett's extensive interest and knowledge of public policy and international relations enables him to offer distinctive insights into how Indian-Australian relations will shape the opportunities for international education and business over the next few years. So without further delay, I'd like to invite Mr. Rajesh Singh to say some words, and then we'll have Loren give his presentation.
Thanks, Luciano, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this forum of discussion. And I'd like to thank all the CEOs from different companies who have joined, and it is definitely going to benefit all our audience, especially people who have joined from corporates, and we have our students with us who have joined, and they are going to benefit from this discussion. I will tell something about ECA, and then I will hand over everything to you guys, because everyone is anxiously waiting to hear your experience and views on today's subject. So ECA is a private education provider in Australia, and it has been started by my younger brother, Rupesh Singh. He went to Australia in 1998. He struggled a lot there. Then he started he completed his postgraduate in IT. Then started one IT company. Then he moved to education sector. Then he started with English language school, then vocational colleges, then higher education colleges. Now he is having around, our group is having around 7 our own colleges in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And getting a university status in Australia is not so easy. There are 42 universities, and 39 out of 42 are public universities. So what private providers do, they partner with public universities and open campus in other cities. And same thing with Victoria University. We have Victoria University Sydney campus. Similarly, we have Swinburne University Sydney campus, and our recent partnership is with the University of Canberra, and we are coming up with a campus in Sydney with health-related program, University of Canberra Sydney campus. And we have partnership with Charles Stewart University, and we have acquired the online platform of Charles Stewart University, that is IT Masters, and we run online programs and all the domains like cyber security, data science, project management, online courses. So it is one of the biggest platform in Australia, and around 4 lakh students are registered on that platform. and we are planning to launch that platform in India. And being an Indian, Rupesh asked me, he wanted to do something for India, and I was working with IPCL, ONGC, Reliance, and then he asked me one day, we want to do something for Indian people, and we want to expand everything in India as well. So I joined ECA Group, our own group, in 2016, and we started one program with Victoria University and Ganpat University collaboration, Masters of Business ERP and Masters of Business Analytics here in Ahmedabad on SAP platform. And now we have recently launched MBA, online MBA from London Metropolitan University. It is our recent partnership. So we have launched that platform here in India, Australia, and UK. And we are coming up with more campuses with more university partners like Liverpool John Moores and Charles Stewart University programs, our own programs in Australia. So this is a brief. I will not take much of your time. This is a brief of Education Center of Australia. And we have recently partnered with Indian universities also, universities and colleges. And we are setting up study centers in India. We have recently partnered with Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute. It is based in Delhi and Indore. So we have come up with the London Met Online Study Center in that campus. And Delhi and Jaipur, we are also coming up with 2 more institutes, study centers. So our purpose of doing all this to give affordable, to give quality education at affordable cost to Indian students, and they will get benefited. We have a very big team, and Luciano's leading that team, is organizing internship and placement at global level. And Manoj ji, he is doing great job in India, and because of him, we are here on this platform. So our purpose of doing all these things to give benefit to Indian students, they get global education at affordable cost. And we have recently launched PBEL, project-based experiential learning, and I think Lauren is going to talk about that. Students will be having opportunity to do internship and project with Australian companies.
I need you for 2 minutes.
So I will not take much of your time. This is all about ECA, and we are planning to do big things in India, and we need your all support of the corporates and institutes, universities, and people here in India. And over to now you, Luciano. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Before we go into the panel discussion, I'd now like to introduce Loren D'Souza to shed a little bit of light on this, the diagnostics and other tools within our employability advantage tool that Rajesh touched upon. Loren, over to you.
Thank you, Luciano. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody in India and all those attending globally, and to the panel as well. It's really a pleasure to present to you what we're really working on as a solution to handle the issues that we're facing with students, and not only students, but also in the industry itself. The issue that we're talking about today is basically the issue related to when people in the industry want to kind of upskill. There's always a challenge as to how do they upskill? How do they work with their HR departments or their managers and mentors to upskill and find that next level that they're looking for and challenge themselves. At the same time, with young students, there's always a challenge of getting that first step into the industry. It does happen with graduate programs, but a lot of students struggle with different areas. What we've done to analyze this, we did research in Australia, and we found that there are several areas from really the basics of understanding and building their resume to make it tracking system compliant, as well as how to attend an interview, what are the different tech skills or smart skills a person needs, and finally, really understanding what are the skill gaps that they have. This is common both when a person wants to go from level 1 to level 2, as well as for young students who want to step into industry for the first time. What we have done is we're actually in the process of developing a tool at quite advanced stages now, which really put together things, and this can actually help industry and students both alike. The tool is called Employability Advantage, and what it does really is we provide a platform for both universities as well as for industry to access this tool. The idea behind this tool is we will be using artificial intelligence at the back end of this particular tool, where students getting onto the platform select an industry of their choice. This could be anything from accounting to architecture, engineering, information technology, etc. Once they do that, the system itself will then allow them to take a diagnostic assessment. What we want to really do is understand what are the gap areas that they have. Now, assume the student is, for example, an accounting student or an IT student. An IT student, for example, might have a certain knowledge that they've gained at university level or even at the workplace. But as you know, things are never constant. Things are never static. It's always this constant change happening. And therefore, it's really important that teams within an organization or even students are looking at what are those skill areas they need to kind of improve on and develop. This tool allows them to actually take a diagnostic test and understand what are those gap areas in their own field of study. Once that happens, that would really unlock other areas within our tool, like the tech skills and smart skills, even a project-based virtual internship, and also things to help them, like a resume tool and an interview tool. Now, even within an organization, if they need to kind of pitch for the next level position, it's important that they're able to understand how, what are the questions they need to answer. So once the assessment, once the student understands, what is the field of study that they want to get a diagnostic assessment in, that then happens. Assuming, for example, this is an IT student, they would then be able to carry out a diagnostic assessment on, let's say, if they specialize as a front-end developer, then they will actually get onto the platform, get a test taken in special skill areas. It could be technical areas like Java or Python or whatever it is in that skill. So for an accounting student, it'll be questions related to that particular domain area. And once the test is done and the student completes the assessment, they then get a score and they get a result, which they can then look at and see and understand what are the gap areas, for them to kind of move to the next level. Now, having done that, the tool actually unlocks certain areas. It unlocks technical skills and smart skills. What we've done is we've partnered with LinkedIn on this, and we've developed learning paths. Students can then go into that particular learning path. So let's say I'm a front-end developer, I would get into a learning path and actually be able to work on those gap areas and develop that. At the same time, I could also work on certain smart skill areas. I might have a gap in, let's say, conflict resolution or problem solving, and I could actually work on that gap area and enhance my skills in that area. So both, again, at the industry level, as well as for fresh students, this is a great platform where everything is in one place to kind of get you up and get those skills moving to that next level. And likewise, the tool unlocks various other aspects. It unlocks a resume tool, and which we specially developed. And again, this has artificial intelligence functionality, which means it'll help you with keywords and actually build up areas and support you in building that resume. A lot of students struggle in putting together the resume. They struggle in terms of how to write a cover letter. So this tool really helps you with AI and supports that initiative to kind of build up the right resume for you and present yourself in a manner that is marketable, in the right manner within the organization or to a new organization. And moving further, we've also got an artificial intelligence-based interview tool. Now, the beauty of this tool is that it allows students to really practice, or even industry personnel to actually understand what are the areas that they need to practice on when they want to make their pitch. And sometimes you might have a great employee, but they're just not able to make their pitch to the manager. This will actually, by industry, it actually takes you through Either you want to ask questions related to certain competencies or certain technical areas, and you can sort of wave on that scale that you'd want, and it would then work that out for you accordingly. So it's a lot of practice that'll help students. So this is the tool that we're actually putting together to get students ready to be more job ready, and for industry, a great platform for their own employees to upskill. So a great opportunity for L&D teams to look at this opportunity. So that's in a nutshell the EdTech tool that we're working on. Thank you very much, and I'd like to pass it now back on to Luciano.
Thank you so much, Loren. We are enormously excited by the potential of this tool and taking it to our key markets, where India is very pivotal to that. So thank you for going through the overview. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to the main event of today and begin our panel discussion. So I would like to invite the moderator, Mr. Bala Subramanian, to moderate the CEO meet. Over to you, Bala, please.
Thank you, Luciano. Thank you. It's a great honor to me to moderate this distinguished panel of experts and proven market leaders on a most worthy topic of business transformation and driving organizational change with evolving skill set. This is a very, very timely topic and very useful topic to really get into. Fulfilling expectations and need of today's consumers require approaching businesses differently than what we faced over a decade ago. Today's businesses requires to reinvent faster to keep up to the constant demands of the market and people. So this requires businesses to adapt to new age technologies and new ways to reach their customers. So I would invite Dr. Aquil to share his views.
Thank you, Bala, and thank you, ECA, for inviting me. Thank you. It's a privilege, Manoj and Lucian. Thank you. No, Bala, you touched upon the word transformation, and you use the word 10 years. I have a different perspective. 10 years is too long. What COVID has done in 18 months has shown us that all our effort to digitalize, to change ways of working, to resist a lot of things and say, no, this will not work in my company. Work from home is all for all these fancy multinationals and all Accentures and IBMs of this world. We were proven wrong. The point I'm looking at future is that if you do a scenario planning of what will change, that nothing will go back to normal as we knew normal. There are many of us still thinking that, when we go back to normal, when the COVID is over, we'll do this, we'll go back to this. I feel that normal is dead. And I think living in denial to plan for something is going to be very short term. My way of looking at this, Bala, is that in the coming 2 to 4 years time frame, the entire working methodology and operation will change. It's already changing, it will change further. Technology will play a very big role. Not going to place of work will become the norm. Work from anywhere will come in. And I think as CEOs and HR professionals or even business leaders, we actually are not anticipating this. Many of us, not all. So the trick in dealing with transformation is not to prepare, but to proactively anticipate. And I'll elaborate this, Bala, later on. I don't take too much time on your question. But only one change that I would look at as a CEO or as a head of business also, that leave aside the predictable path. Proactively look at what could change. And that is where Shell scenario planning, I've done some work on that, will really help us that if this happens, what will we do?
Very good, very good, very interesting insights, Dr. Aquil. So what you said is 10 years too long. I completely agree with you. And it's past 18 months with COVID being a pandemic across the world changed a lot. I particularly liked your point around an advice to a CEO of the business head that leave aside the predictable path, proactively look for change, proactively anticipate. So that's very interesting insights. I would invite Ashish, given that you are in the forefront of new age technology, right? Connecting the world, which is very, very important. I would invite you, Ashish, to share your views.
The Assis, hello, the Assis connectivity are in disturbing something, isn't it? So try to connect. Right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think it mentioned it at the start that he's in a region which has been, brought down completely for whatever reason. So fine, apologies. So that's all right. So let's go ahead and hear our other distinguished panel. Vikas here. He's in the automotive sector, and these change affects his business area too. So would love to hear his thoughts.
So thank you, Bala, and very happy to be in the distinguished company of the esteemed panelists, and thank you to ECA for getting me here. Of course, I represent the manufacturing sector, the nuts and bolts, as you call it, right? And when we talk about the business transformation, immediately the first thing that comes to the top of our mind today is what has COVID done to the entire planet. But that aside, of course, there are learnings in place. The biggest learning being, and having put in now 3 decades into the professional workspace for me, is that you cannot take anything for granted, and we are truly living in disruptive business times. And while we always heard of, the much quoted phrase being VUCA world, right? That VUCA has really now slammed home the brutal reality that we see of a huge disruption. Now, when I specifically in my opening comments talk about the 4 M's, which makes the manufacturing sector move, which is the man, material, method, and the machine. It is man actually, which is the most critical element. And as we evolve constantly in our organizations also, I think a great learning is that the future rests in the war for talent and those who keep evolving constantly, and which is where the skill upgradation, the upskilling and everything keeps on continuously happening. Of course, as Dr. Aquil rightly observed, the workplace has changed forever. It's no longer a permanent workplace. Probably it's a remote workplace. Probably it's a hybrid workplace. All of that, and the pandemic is still not past us. It continues to evolve. So not only we would need to be watchful of these environmental factors, but leaving pandemic aside, I think the way the world economies have been moving, and at least India, even before the pandemic set in, 2019-20 was not a great year to be, and the economy was not doing as well as it was expected to do. 2021, of course, the first quarter was taken by the COVID first wave. The economy then came back to a V-shaped kind of a recovery. It was a sharp recovery that we saw. While we had just settled in, probably thinking that the worst was behind us, the brutal second wave hit, and it was tragic. We as an organization, we lost quite a few people, right? And a few of my very dear colleagues are on this call. They forced me to share the link for this particular conference, right? So these were the guys who kept on going to the work, kept on engaging with the workers day in, day out. They did not have the comfort of, staying back, working from home, trying to do VCs, because the products were to be made physically in the factories, and the business leaders could not be away from the work area operations. Now, what did it call for? It called for a high degree of commitment, right? Because your personal safety aside, the workers and the managers and the leaders reporting into work day on day, day in, day out. And these were not recognized as, the health workers or the critical workers as the government or all of us categorized. But for me, they were the superheroes who were like reporting in daily for work, irrespective of the COVID, called for commitment. It also called for reorganizing themselves to new dimensions and new roles without any training. We never had any hospital beds or any critical care centers running in our workplaces, right? We never thought that perhaps health was the biggest thing that we needed to take care of, right? So keeping all those protocols, reinventing themselves called for some amount of commitment, called for their past trainings of having been thrown into a war. Right. So this was an indeed eye opener. The second wave ended, thankfully, in July or August. And I was just joking with the panelists before this session started that at probably 20,000 numbers today, we have declared India to be COVID-free. That is the kind of population we have, and we think that perhaps the worst is behind us. I hope I'm right, right? And then the manufacturing sector was hit by the semiconductor crisis. There are no semiconductors, there are no microchips, the chip crisis has hit worse than the COVID crisis. And the OEMs and the vehicle makers, they have been forced to cut down their production by almost like 30%, 40%. Now, this is the new disruption which has happened, right? Again, calls for a huge amount of, skill set to be able to deal with these kind of situations, right? Hit the ground running when the business priorities demand it, how to step back, how to recalibrate, how to remodulate, how to reinvent yourself. So that is currently the game which is happening. It may look very, very distressing or something which is a huge problem to look at, but at the same point of time, these are the times which are actually testing the metal, right? And we happen to be at that cusp of moving on from normalcy to either doom or to glory. So only the best organizations would survive. We have seen a lot of washouts that happened in terms of organizations' own resilience to be able to battle the last 12, 18, 24 months. And if you just quote from Charles Darwin's analogy, it is not the survival of the fittest. Actually, it is the survival of the one who is most adaptable to the change that is coming, right? So with these opening remarks, I'm very happy to be here and would love to hear the other panels.
Balaji, sorry, Balaji Assis has joined.
Ashish is back.
All
right.
Hi, Mr. Balaji. I'm really sorry, can't put on my the video on as of now with the restricted bandwidth that I have, but I'll be happy to answer and be there on the audio to talk to you guys.
Absolutely, Ashish. Thank you. And I understand the disruption that's going through in your location, so which we empathize with. And thank you for coming back into the conversation. We've been having very interesting share of insights. Just now, Vikas, who is in the auto sector, the leader in the auto sector, has just concluded his first opening views on this, right? I mean, the business transformation itself. Few real nice observations that he had come with. He said, you cannot take anything for granted. We are living in disruptive times. The workplace has changed forever. And he shared interesting observations of how when the country was going through the COVID wave, being in the manufacturing sector and in the factory, as key leaders have to be on the ground, hitting and running and right to keep the production up. And it needed a high degree of commitment. Personal safety aside, reporting to work day in, day out. And he also talked about, it needs people to really come with a newer level of commitment not experienced before. Interestingly, I mean, given that kind of setup, I think, Ashish, you being in the telecom industry, this is kind of, the lifeline for most of the people, went through the lockdowns and the COVID times. While Dr. Aquil mentioned before that COVID is not going to, the behavior changes is not going to go back to the old times of normalcy, right? We're going to live in the new normal. Your sector of telecom plays a huge role. Can you share your views how, the business transformations that you plan to and how, does your industry would disrupt?
Sorry, again, his network has disconnected, and he's facing a lot of problem because he's in Jaipur, and there, and today the internet is closed and all that, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's,
I think it's a total shutdown in his area, which is all
yeah,
right and understandable.
right, yeah,
Um, I would I kind of we'll wait for Ashish to come. We will kind of move ahead when Ashish comes back. We'll hear from him. I mean, from what Vikas shared just now, he was talking about a different skill set that people is required to really practice more so in the on the softer side of it. That's things like commitment, things like putting your personal safety aside, and bringing that leadership in you. I'll be very interested to hear Lauren's view on how do you really plan to bring that up in your education system in terms of how you prepare people for.
That's a really good question, and one that I wasn't anticipating, Balaji, actually. I think that the points I was going to make, and I'll try and address that question in the 3 points I was going to make in this opening session, actually, which is really that while I acknowledge everything that Dr. Aquil and Mr. Vikas has said as being very appropriate and true, I also sort of partly disagree with them in terms of what we're seeing, because I think the first point I would make is that the changes that we're seeing as a result of COVID are not the same everywhere and not the same in every industry. We experience some very different things depending upon which industry you're in and in which country you're in, and so on. And I won't elaborate too much on that, except to say that in education, we have seen massive changes in the way in which we're delivering our teaching, and therefore the skills that we're expecting our students to have. And it was very interesting for us to see that our students had a very variable ability to deal with educational technology. Once we moved to online teaching and so on, we assumed they all had a base knowledge of being able to use the technology, and they couldn't. So that's my first point, really, is that the changes are not the same everywhere. They vary across industries, and we need to be very conscious of that. But my second point is that actually the changes that we are seeing are not COVID changes, none of them. They're all existing trends. What COVID has done has accelerated those changes. So people were already using Zoom. They were already holding meetings across Zoom long before COVID hit. But we have all become much more Zoom capable since COVID has been in place, and we've had to be able to. We've not been allowed to travel. We've had to have meetings like this. And so what we've seen is an acceleration of trends. And again, I think to go back to the question you were asking, Balaji, around our students, well, what we've seen is our students have had to get up to speed with learning in different ways, and actually then thinking about how they will use those particular skills in different industries once they're in those industries. So for example, our accounting students, great, they can do their account. They've always been very technologically savvy anyway, and being able to hold a consultation with a client via Zoom or whatever, and then be able to prepare the information is quite straightforward. But as Rajesh mentioned earlier on, our university is currently opening a centre with ECA in Sydney, which will be health focused. That will be teaching nurses and other allied health professions whose job is primarily to work with patients hands-on in direct environments. But what we've had to do is to adapt even in that environment. What skills can our students have in which they can do diagnosis remotely, they can do consultations remotely, they can support people remotely. So again, I think what we see is an acceleration of what was becoming a trend in telemedicine and telehealth more generally. That's being accelerated very quickly as a result of COVID. So I think there's some real positives there. The third point I was going to make, and I think this goes back to those job changes and everything, is the economic and environmental challenges that we face are not specifically COVID generated, although they have again been enhanced by COVID. But particularly the environmental challenges, again, what I think we see is people realizing that by not having to travel as much and not going to work as often, but actually working from home and everything, they can actually have a small environmental impact themselves. And as a result, I think that we see, again, that acceleration and that capacity of people to actually address some of those other big issues that were challenging our nations and our society more generally by being able to adapt and use COVID as an accelerating tool to do that. So whilst I would never decry the tragedy that has been the case of COVID for many, many families and so on, I would also say that there has been some significant advantages, I think, for us out of the last 18 months in terms of the way in which we've moved much quicker in our economies to be able to adjust to the opportunities that are there. And there are going to be immense opportunities to restructure in that new normal as we start to think about it. Thank you, Balaji.
Brilliant, Lawrence. You answered so well, and it opens up a lot of insights. And I think few key messages from your sharing of thoughts is that the education industry said that people adapted so well, right? The students, I could see my children going online from offline, and it's been going pretty smooth. And you talked about it, particularly that the COVID didn't bring in change, but it kind of accelerated the normal change otherwise that the world is going through. And so it's not a real change, it just accelerated the progress, right? So we just moved ahead multiple years in terms of where we are. And you kind of shared examples of how the diagnostic tools in the healthcare and the telemedicine, telehealth really bringing in people closer to the doctor, but not really touching with each other and so on. So it's pretty interesting views. I will invite Dr. Aquil. How do you really see this, right? I mean, with Lawrence's view of, the changes are accelerated and we are moved ahead. How do you keep up pace with the changes in the HR policies for the companies that have been on the flight, right? Especially the bigger companies. How do they adapt to these changes at pace? How do you really bring in the newest skill set, right? Vikas talked about the newer soft skills needed from people, the commitments and different leadership qualities. Lawrence talked about, we just progressed, accelerated pretty, ahead of time. How do you see, Dr. Aquil, that these HR policies and other things that could get adapted in the larger companies or the in-flight companies?
Bala, what Professor Lawrence mentioned is absolutely on the dot, that it has accelerated beyond expectation. And now that we got taste of blood of accelerated change, I don't think we are going to go back to slow rate of change. Now, that does not mean that every change is in our control, especially when an external factor like COVID came, Professor Lawrence, and your point that this was out of control in many ways than one. But I look at it this way, and since I am an HR by blood, I cannot but comment on my own function. It is the HR community will have to change. And to borrow the word from Professor Lawrence, that they have to change very fast. All the times that we have been used to HR policies and practices, many of them have become obsolete, not will become, because the requirement has changed. And I'll give two examples, Bala. Succession planning, and Mr. Marwa will bear with me, sir. How much time people like you and me spend on succession planning? Who will go where, one job away, two job away, and in what time frame, and what input will give them, what development input will give, what rotation will do. Second point, high potential. So we take on a bunch of people, we anticipate that this is the skill required for the future health of the organization and growth, and these people have the high potential. Sounds very neat and clean. All that has to be thrown away because the requirement of leadership going forward has changed. You cannot have a recipe which is now obsolete and have a best cake available. Now, if the leadership requirement is going to change, and what Dr. Ms. Marva very rightly referred, that the commitment part had one more element that came in, empathy. First time all of us have seen people empathize, not sympathize, empathize and understand pain of others. And many organizations went out of their way to convert that empathy into a real engagement with employees. My prediction, Bala, that as the things come back to business level, this empathy level will go down. I hope I'm wrong. But the senior leaders of the organizations will actually be under so much pressure to revive business and get revenue that they will say, look, when it was required, we showed empathy, sympathy, whatever names you HR guys want to show. Now let's get down to business. That is where the culture change will harm us. We cannot flip-flop. One day you are asking, how's your dog, how's your mother-in-law? And next day you are saying that, you are on a notice period. These are realities, Bala. And that is where HR community will have to wake up to say, if the policy has to change, because we have created it, don't get married to it, throw it away. Working from home, how do you measure output? There are people, and you are from the same industry, sir. You know how much moonlighting is going on in IT industry. People working with one company, doing project for other companies. So these are dangerous. This is dangerous trend in terms of proprietary information.
Right.
Besides, how do you measure effectiveness contribution? So far, we were doing this performance appraisal, annual appraisal, annual increments. All that will be over because companies, in my opinion, will look at short-term goals. Even the goal planning cycle will change. So companies will not plan for 10 years, 5 years, long-term. It may be possible that companies will look for quarter to quarter. Now people say, oh, this is very transaction. So what? Transaction shouldn't be a dirty word. What is needed for the health of the organization, what is needed for the employees' welfare must be kept on. So it may happen that goals are set on 6 monthly or quarterly basis. If the company meets the goal, employees share the gains. If not, better luck next quarter. These are harsh realities. This is where HR will have to be, and I don't want to use this jargon, agile and adaptable. They have to be real. And they can only get real if they understand business. And I can criticize my own function, that we are very good at knowing PAT, PBT, CAGR to the last decimal point. But what is the business leader like Mr. Marva losing sleep over? We sometimes miss out. What is the competition going to do? What is the new technology disruptive that will completely wipe me off the map? Those are things HR is missing out. And now they will by force will have to learn all this, re-revise the policies and practices and throw things that is not working. So I use a very simple MBA terminology. Maintain what is core: ethics, values, compliance. Break. In this confusion world, it's a good time to break many things and create more confusion. You can get away with blue murder.
Right.
And that is the advantage of breaking things and remaking it and reimagining and bringing it. And this is the last part, A, of MBA, is that align with business. Don't stay in this ivory tower of HR. This will serve you, our business. Our interest is to serve the business. All those are jargons. Get down to grassroots. Get down to brass tacks. If the reskilling has to be done, find out what reskilling is required in which part of the business. Throw the training calendar away. Now, I may sound radical, but this is not radical. This is commonsensical approach. You cannot have a predictable calendar of training when organization charts, for example, all these neat boxes that we have defining what job, who will do, who will report to who. In my opinion, in time to come, not very far off, all these boxes will get blurred. With the pressure on more for less, 2 people will be expected to do work of 3. Now that doesn't mean volume of work will increase. The skill set will be need to be given to them. How can they do that 0.5 work extra? And that is where the hardcore reality of reskilling. What does the business need? What is the value add will be looked by HR. So HR has got a big agenda ahead. You cannot just sit back and say we give dry ration to people when there was bad times and we give masks to people and we ask them how the dog is. Those were things required up to a point. Let's do it. But now get down to reviving business, not supporting business. HR will have to play a very formal, assertive role in reviving business.
Right.
And I mean this very seriously, Bala.
Right. Very well said, Dr. Akil. I think you touched a very, very important point that HR of companies have a lot in their hands to really help with the transformation of these businesses, these companies, for which they have to really align with the business and understand what is needed for the business to be successful and help with reviving the business. Very, very important point, very touching one. Because looking at you, your industry and your company, how far and how much of this you're going to really look at as a need for reskilling, right? I mean, as we see that the world is accelerating with the business transformations, and how do you really see this as the core of your business? And what are the steps you believe that the industry should take in to really transform themselves?
Sure. So some amazing insights from Dr. Akil as usual, and I cannot disagree with him on anything. He has highlighted some major awakening points, I would say, as we look towards the future. So, of course, we have discussed that the pandemic has accelerated the business transformation. So coming back to the core subject of this meet being business transformation, even before pandemic, there were few buzzwords that I think not only the manufacturing industry but the service industry and everybody was playing with. One was digitalization, right? Then there was artificial intelligence. Then there was machine learning, human-machine interface, smart factories of the future, Factory 2.0. These were the buzzwords that we were playing with for the effective business transformation. Now, I think it's very clear that we all need to develop a very knowledgeable, a strategically adapt, a cognitive, flexible, and proficient workforce. While these may sound very heavy words, but as a CEO, I must admit that the lack of key skills today for the future is what is the biggest threat on my mind for the future growth. What work today will not work for the future, and we saw it happening very much during COVID. See, ultimately, we need to be clear about few things that technology is going to be in the forefront. We use technology to the helm. We were not very technologically advanced, but whatever we had, I think knowing the basic technology is non-negotiable. So the future workforce, which will be testing the models like remote working, hybrid work modules, and increased digitalization and automation, knowing basic technology is something which is going to be non-negotiable as far as our industry is concerned. Ultimately, we need employees who are adept in, let's say, robotic processes, automation, material science, simulation models, machine learning models, and all of this needs to come in the curriculums. Because the factories of the future will be very critically needing this. If you see the tech-savvy platforms, they had a ball, they had a home run during COVID. The kind of usage of apps and everything was like never before. And it was technology which kept on these companies going. So that is one bucket where I think the upskilling is very, very necessary in terms of redesigning our course curriculum, then where the academia industry interface will need to be of even a higher order. Dr. Akil talked about disruption. Probably and with all due respect, the NCERT books and all the other books and all today no longer subscribe to the needs of the industry to the extent that we wanted, right? Even the engineers, with all due respect, that are passing out of all the colleges, it is no longer about, machining and casting and all these processes. All of this is hygiene now. They need to have evolved into a higher set of knowledge, higher set of capability, where probably a bachelor's of engineering education may not hold good even with a 5-year kind of an experience to the kind of challenges which the manufacturing industry takes for. So I think when we look at, and I have been talking to a few academia related people also, predictive maintenance is something which needs to come in. We cannot be caught napping. We cannot be having shocks. So predictive maintenance kind of things need to come in. Risk management and business continuity planning. It was lockdown, 3 months lockdown, and then expecting that the factories open and they start producing the same quality of goods with a depleted manpower of 50%, with fear on your mind, the supply chain disrupted. It is so business continuity planning is non-negotiable. Multi-role flexibility. Again, a mechanical engineer passing out with a 5-year kind of a qualification only and only, reading the mechanical engineering parts. The future is about multi-role flexibility. We talked about mechanical parts earlier. We talked about electronic parts earlier. The new thing is mechatronics, which is a merger of both mechanical as well as electronics. Right? So besides the automation and AI and the smart factory concepts that needs to be imbibed, I think that personalized learning and getting the future generation ready for the industry needs is something which is very critical. Today, when we receive, kind of proposals from all the institutions where the graduates are passing out and requesting us to take them on board as graduate engineer trainings, come on the campus, talk to us. I think it's important that in the developing, in the grooming years of these young generation, when they are probably got the basics right in the first year or the second year, the industry steps in at that time, and a kind of an expectation setting starts happening there, so that it is not the campus placements at the end of the 5 years which are getting these kids onto the industry, but which is being laid out like 24 to 36 months in advance. And these are the factories where I'm grooming my future workforce.
Interesting.
I'm trying to do a pilot with one of the institutions, but this is just to share that what are our expectations and how do we expect the future workforce to be.
Excellent, Vikas. I think
Beautiful.
academia, industry, the connection and you applying it is so helpful, so nice. A quick question to you, Lawrence. I think one of the audience have asked this question. Given the pandemic, while the world has moved on to the online world, does online education hold similar value to an on-campus education? What's your perspective on this? You're on the mute, Lawrence.
Somebody had to do it at some point, didn't they? Be on mute. So thank you to Harish for the question, which I understand where that question is probably coming from, because a large number of students have found the online experience a very sudden surprise and have not necessarily enjoyed it. Universities themselves have not necessarily provided a great experience either. They've done a very incredible job in terms of moving to online very quickly, but at the same time, it hasn't been a perfectly designed approach. So I recognise where that's coming from. If I can just think about it in a longer term though, so what's happened here is this acceleration of something that was already happening in my industry, which was the move to more and more materials being online and learning taking place in a very different way from the way in which I studied when I was a student, in which all of the materials were in a textbook or in provided in lectures and tutorials. Now, increasingly, we expect students to be able to search the internet, to be able to find information for themselves, and then to actually come back into the classroom to reflect on that. So is the online experience the same as a campus-based experience? Definitely not. And the way I see it, I think that our students have 3 different relationships with the university. They wouldn't necessarily understand these different relationships, but this is a way when I was Pro Vice Chancellor, I tried to shape all of our services So first, they have a commercial relationship with the university. That is, they're customers of a service. That service is not a qualification. That service is an education. And so what we're trying to do there is to provide a structured way of learning something so that students can engage. Secondly, they have a educational focus with the university, and that's where they're challenged. They are pushed hard. They are not given an easy ride. Their minds are expanded and shaped and so on by the opportunities that we're able to put in front of them as a university. But the third one, and so both of those I think can be achieved online quite successfully. The third one, though, is that students are also part of a community normally at a university. They come, they don't just study, they meet other like-minded students. They maybe meet students who are not like-minded and have political or other forms of disagreements with them, which are actually part of building the individual. They engage in sports activities, they engage in cultural activities and so on. And that community thing, that's the thing that's missing from a completely online experience. But I think what we'll see is an acceleration of the online, but in which universities and other education institutions seek to find other opportunities for that community engagement, which can be either virtual or physical. And we all know that the physical engagement still remains important, and which is why I said early on that I think what we've seen is an acceleration of trends, not a fundamental shift in the way in which the world is going to be. Because what we see immediately, as soon as our campus opened up again, students couldn't wait to be back on campus. They wanted to be there. And our biggest challenge has been that our international students have not been able to come to our campus until the beginning of next year, but hopefully that will happen. If I could just, whilst I've got the virtual floor, analogy, if I could just go to Vikasji's point around how we skill students for those future jobs, and very much recognizing the changing demands that we have. And my view is that universities are never going to be on the cutting edge of all of the big changes that are taking place in industry. They will be, through their researchers, they will be working with industry to drive that, but those will not be spread across all universities. There'll be specific skills that will be coming out of specific universities and so on. But I want to take you back to 18th century England and to Oxford University, where the best and brightest students in the United Kingdom went to Oxford or Cambridge, and they studied classics. They studied Greek, they studied Latin, and other very, very useful subjects. The purpose being to expand their brains, not to train them for a specific career, but to expand their ability. Then in the early 20th century, Oxford introduced a new degree called PPE, Politics, Philosophy and Economics. And PPE had that same goal. And in fact, now the majority of people who run the civil service in the UK, and also people who are in very senior commercial positions in the UK, have all done PPE at Oxford. Because again, it had that same sort of purpose of trying to expand the brain, not to get you ready for a job. And I think that's what universities have to do now. We have to invent the PPE or the classics of the 21st century. And that would mean that all students need to be exposed to STEM subjects, but they also need to be exposed to social science subjects and humanities subjects, because the key thing to me in the pandemic has been that our medical science has been brilliant, but our ability to understand people's behavior has been incredibly limited in this. So working out how we skill medical, technical, engineers and so on with those humanities skills and those social science skills, and working out how we skill social scientists with technical skills, STEM skills and so on, I think is the big challenge for the education sector over the next couple of years, because that is where the future sits, I think. And then we will be producing graduates that Vikasji's businesses will be wanting, because they will have that broad set of skills, but also the ability to keep learning.
Right. Super. So, I'm looking at the time. We've well passed over. I probably will keep it for our next 3 questions. There are quite a few on the screen. I'm going to club questions and probably now to Dr. Aquil. I'm going to club 2-3 questions to you. One is around the software job opportunities, right? The question is the software job opportunities. Software job opportunities in the upcoming 4 to 5 years. Likewise, there is another employment-related question, which says the data analytics is considered to be most in demand for the 21st century. But do you think this can be replaced by automation and self-service analytics, which is again very relevant and related question to the job opportunity? But I'm also going to have another flavor thrown at you, given that you are the marketing specialist expert. Can you explain the impact of digital marketing in coming year? Right. So that's the other question. So I just clubbing that together to you to get your perspectives.
Sure. So, Bala, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I answer these 3 specific questions, I'd like to go back to what Mr. Marwa mentioned. And since we have a large community of students available as an audience today, I don't want to pontificate or give advice, but pointers. If you rewind and listen to Mr. Marwa's comment about the practical way the industry need is changing, and he talked about industry-academia interface, that just getting a degree is not sufficient. Because what you learn in this 5-year degree or 4-year degree is actually obsolete, with due respect to all the academicians here.
Correct.
Why is it obsolete? Because the curriculum was made at a time which was prehistoric compared to today's time. So the purpose of that ECN, what Rajesh mentioned about the activities of ECN, I want to take some pointers for my younger professionals, that if ECA actually delivers what it promises, what Mr. Rajesh Singh mentioned, the topping up. You get a basic foundation by programs that you attend as an engineer or an MBA. You top it up. Without that topping up, the industry-academia interface is incomplete. Fortunately, Mr. Marwa, that was the topic of my PhD, industry-academia interface.
Interesting, sir.
And you mentioned something pertinent. So the students will have to understand 2 things, and I'm talking data now. The future growth of professionals will not be decided by gray hair or no hair as we have done all this time. So managerial experience will not be criteria for growth. It will be techno-managerial knowledge that will drive growth. So all the youngsters who feel they get a fancy MBA like I did, and I'll become an MD within so many period, a managing CEO in so much time frame, is completely fairy tale. But those of the younger people who are adapting technology quickly, and what was the word Mr. Marwa used? Mechanical and electronic. Is that right, sir?
Mechatronic.
It is a little tongue twister, but I understand this combination of electronic and mechanical. Now, Note College curriculum covers this. This is where ECA can play a very big role in filling the gap and topping it up. So now coming to the question, do not rely upon software jobs and as a predictable what we did. If you go to automotive industry, companies, even traditional companies like Maruti, went on to use AI much faster than they had planned. There are companies which were scared of AI and ML. Oh, this is only for rich and famous companies. It is not so. It is coming into the only part. The question is that automation is not going to replace jobs. It is an augmented facility. Jobs will become easier, will become faster, productivity will increase, jobs will increase. Now, you may not have a software job, but you may have a robotic maintenance job. Now you'll say, but what is robotic maintenance got to do? Accept it. That is a reality. Don't sit down in IBM office and write software and coding. Those days are over. And if you want to be predicted that Accenture will certainly give you the job to do predictable software, even that will change. Now, I'm not trying to give a gloomy picture, Bala. Please don't let them misunderstand. The fact is, When times change, when tectonic plate is moving, don't stay stationary.
Absolutely.
Find out which way the wind is blowing, which way the needs of the industry. You know, in Boy Scout, we used to put a finger in my mouth and put it up to find out which way the wind is blowing. This is the time to do that trick again. If the trend is moving towards automation, don't get scared of automation. Learn. Now, but oh, I have done electrical engineering. Where will I learn about robotics? Coursera, ECA. There are N number of, people like me who did not know anything about 3D printing, and not that I'm a graduate, science graduate. I enrolled in a Coursera program for 3D. 80%, 85% went over my head. I don't know what resin is. Who cares? But I know that you can build a house in 5 days compared to 4 months.
Right.
Get aware. Details will come later. So
Right.
the idea of saying, will the software job be there? Maybe, maybe not. Now you'll say, well, whatever experience are you bringing to this discussion? No, we don't want to do guesswork. We don't want to do kite flying. But that software that you knew 5 years, Java, what you knew 2 years ago is not Java today. Forget anything else. SAP went down the tube faster than any one of us anticipated. Sibyl is nowhere to be seen nowadays. Then now we talk about, so accept the reality that jobs are not under threat for people who can adapt to change. Those who are not afraid to take head on, make it it's a challenge, but what is the worst thing that can happen? You'll take time to learn robotics. You'll take time to learn how to use augmented intelligence. But if you don't do it, it's like walking on a treadmill. Then you keep walking faster, keep having energy boosting drinks and keep walking faster. You'll remain stationary where you are, where career is.
Right.
Blunt reality, time to accept reality, not get scared, not get depressed, but listen to what the youngsters, if you're on the call today, listen to what we are sharing with a little bit of experience, that if you do not change and remain stationary, consider yourself walking very fast on treadmill and keep walking faster and faster and faster, you'll remain safe.
Excellent, excellent. Beautiful analogy, beautiful. And I know, I'm afraid that, we are over the time, much over the time. It's time to really close our panel discussion, give back quite a few interesting questions. But I think, Dr. Aquil, you kind of responded quite a few, and Lawrence had responded too, and Vikas. So I think we fairly covered multiple of those questions in the chat box. There's a very interesting key takeaways that I see basis the expertise inputs from Vikas, Lawrence, and Dr. Aquil is business transformation across the industries and across the world has accelerated. It's not going to slow down anytime soon. It's just going to really keep moving at pace. And as Dr. Aquil said that, the treadmill is moving faster, you move fast as well. Don't stagnate, right? Trend keep changing, you shift to learn and learn and learn, don't get scared. The second key takeaway is I picked up from Dr. Aquil saying HR needs to adapt faster too and align strongly with the business to help companies succeed. And the third, I just want to limit to three. The third one is the higher degree of interaction. This is from Vikas, talking about the higher degree of interaction between academia and industry to prepare future workforce to be highly valuable. So on that note, I would like to take this to conclusion, and thank you so much, Dr. Aquil.
So Bala, I have one point with your permission, if you got a minute. So Dr. Aquil very rightly talked about the word empathy, right? Now, empathy is something, of course, that the organizations have experienced like never before due to the troubled times. I think any comprehensive workforce transformation must be designed to accommodate the full diversity of the people and make it inclusive. The companies that live the values of that inclusion are more likely to, retain highly skilled people and to benefit from their full complement of skills. So while I talked about the academic part and the students bit part of it, I think from the industry perspective, it is important for all of us to realize that anybody who makes an inclusive organization where
Will
we
succeed.
embrace a wide range of experience, perspective, goals that the people bring to work, and then upskill the people who are perhaps feeling a challenge, let's say, in embracing technology, are the companies that will ultimately succeed. So that's that's one of the last points I just wanted to make.
Excellent, excellent, Vikas.
Balaji, and with all the esteemed panelists, I would like to say that in our today's CEO meet, the most of honorable vice chancellors and the director and the dean and the HOD of the universities are also attending as a participants. So the deliberation which has been given the insights through Vikasji, through Akilji and Bala Subramanianji and all other panelists, really that will help them for the restructuring of their curriculums and to make it as a industry centric.
Right.
As Akil, you also said that the ECA having the privilege and having the all standardized tools and equipments and syllabus, contents, delivery methods for filling up the gap and what the industry is actually looking for, apart from the academic curriculum that is being imparted by the universities, right? So no doubt, and from these deliberations and particularly the universities vice chancellors and all the professors and will get leveraged, and the student will be also get directed in that manner, so that in the coming days they would be the true professionals from the corporate perspectives and all that, right?
Right.
So over to you, and Bala.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Manoj, for inviting me to really, thanks for this honor, and thanks to Dr. Akil, Vikas, and Lawrence for wonderful insights. I mean, they brought in the best of the insights that we all would benefit out from. And thank you, everybody, the participants, for patiently waiting. Thanks those who interestingly asked multiple questions. Unfortunately, couldn't really cover everything, but we kind of managed to cover most of it. If you read through the responses that came from our distinguished panels, you would get good insights from it. And thank you, everyone. Luciano, back to you.
Thank you very much, Bala. Well, I'll just, in closing, I just wanted to say thank you to elicit some really fascinating views from the panelists. I think it's incredibly timely that we have this discussion when the world is going through such profound change. So just some takeouts further to what you've said. I mean, Dr. Akil mentioned that nothing will go back to normal, that the goals would shift to much more short-termism and maybe a results focus. This notion of techno-managerial knowledge driving growth in the future. Vikas, fascinating concept, survival of the adaptable. This is a key takeout from the audience watching today. And there's some very intelligent questions that the audience are asking today. Who are the leaders of tomorrow? Lawrence spoke of the accelerated business and cultural transformation that which actually answers the question, will this pandemic bring an advantage? I think in many ways it has. But at the same time, COVID has affected countries and sectors in different ways. So the young people watching this fascinating session today, I'd encourage you to just focus on this notion of always add value, always think in your organization, how do I add value? How do I build the skills in myself? How do I address the gap in my own skill set so that I can contribute and be a thought leader of the future within this very fast changing workplace? So it's critical in summary that we build the technical problem solving, agility and employability skills and capabilities of our young people, so that their ability to contribute to industry is clear and always adds this value. So I also just wanted to thank all the panelists here today. It's been such an enjoyable session, and it's an absolute delight to be part of today. I thank you for your time. I'd like to thank the management representatives from ECA India, ECA Global, London Metropolitan University. Lawrence, it was lovely to have your insights today, and to further contribute to our purpose today, which is really to present a higher caliber of employable students to industry. Those students that we didn't address your questions over the course of today's session, the team will certainly get back to you for your Q&A. Over to you, Manoj, for the final word.
Yeah. So so many thanks to Dr. Akilji, and we are very close since a long time, and he is not only a friend, guide, philosopher, but is also my what we can say. And we also get always support from him, and when I required in all that, particularly professional development and all that, right? And really, and you are so kind that you accepted our invitation and came over
My
here.
pleasure.
And
Thank you.
and because and so nice of you, and within a very short span of time, isn't it? But you and very fantastically you enumerated the things and how the academia can get benefited and how they will have to restructure their syllabus and all that, so that they will be aligned and to the industry's vision, right? And Balaji very nicely moderated the session.
Very well
And
done.
it was very connected. So you keep connected all the fellow panelists and all the audience, and audience are very curious because they are asking so many questions and all that, right? And particularly the vice chancellors and the director of the university along with their students are watching and listening at this program, and certainly they will be get leveraged and all that. And Lawrence, you have put forward a very nice thought on the academic perspectives and how the online education is in demand, and as a present scenario as being discussed by the Akilji and all other fellow panelists, because after the pandemic it becomes a part and parcel of the life and all that, right? And
So
Luciano,
Manojji, we should now call Lawrence G, since he's coming to India.
He is coming to India in February, and
So we will now call him Lawrence G.
Or,
Shukriya,
Rajesh,
Akil.
Wow.
and Rajesh ji is really a man of vision, right? So under his vision, and we are catering and reaching the certain height. But no doubt, the Rupesh is not only a man of vision, but also a man of letters, we can say, right? Unfortunately, he couldn't be available today because he was pretty much having the contingent works and with some universities, because we are going to have the more and more university in our buckets, and university are come forwards to have the strategic partner with the ECA, right? And we got the message from Ashish that he apologized due to the poor internet connectivity, and he couldn't participate in as a desired manner. So he said that please pass my an apology to all my fellow panelists and the esteemed attendees, right? So now I would like to request to Rajesh ji and to say a few words and to conclude the session, or as a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Manojji, and thank you all the esteemed panelists, and especially Lawrence and Luciano. They are working on Saturdays, so every time, because we are developing country, we work 24/7, but in Australia, Australian people, they prefer to work 5 days only. So thank you very much, Luciano and Lawrence from Australia.
It's a pleasure.
Lauren as well, and our esteemed panelists, they spare time for our audience. One thing I'd like to share, just I will take 1 or 2 minutes. When we started Victoria University courses here in India, Masters of Business ERP. So because I worked with the corporates, and I thought ERP, industry people, they know ERP very well, but students and sometimes teachers and professors, they do not have that much exposure to ERP. So when I started the course here in India, ERP, it was really difficult to make them understand the importance of ERP. So initially we got 4-5 students, and then slowly started increasing, and we did marketing and other thing. Now we are getting a lot of inquiries. So I'd like to request all the attendees here, and I'll request them to motivate their colleagues and students to attend this type of discussions, so that they would understand, because there is a communication gap between normal public and the industry. When students are studying with us or they are studying in the institutions, they do not have much interaction with corporates and industries. But once they go to industry, they find themselves like, alien. When we started our career, we were not very much comfortable with writing mails, giving presentations, talking to people. But yes, nowadays these things required. So what we are doing here in India, we are partnering with universities, institutions, helping them to update their curriculum as per the global standards. We have a very good professional development team. So all the universities, institutions, and people who have joined, if they want to collaborate with us, Manoj is here. They can contact with Manoj, and we will help them to upgrade themselves as per the global standards. So I'd like to thank again all the audience who have joined and spare their time for this event. I'd like to thank my backend team. We have Vivek, Prashant, Aditya, Bhumi, and there are many other people.
Lovely.
Lovely, yes, Manoj. Thank you very much.
Lovely was very much in connect with all the student panelists. And,
I'd like to thank everyone. They have attended this session. They have supported our digital marketing team, social media team, creative team, everyone. They have made this event successful, and especially to our team who are supporting on ground here. In fact, office boy to receptionist to everyone, they have supported us always whenever we organize any event. So I thank everyone of PCA team and other attendees and our panelists, Manoj's team, Luciano, Lauren, Lawrence, everyone. So thank you very much. Thank you again, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Here and have a nice day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bala,
all
well
for
moderated,
joining us
Bala.
today.
Bala, well moderated.
Yeah.
Very inclusive. Well moderated.
So thank you very
Marwa
much for
Sahab,
joining.
now of course this is over, but if you talk of MSMEs and small sector, they are tremendously under pressure with this change. All the digitization and all is not working for them, and they don't have any wherewithal to take help.
Yeah.
So many of those small scale and medium sized scale companies will go under completely.
No, you are absolutely right, probably, and a very relevant point not connected to this debate. But I can tell you, I think one of the great practices which the OEMs and maybe customers bring to us is the hand-holding of the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers.
So tier 4 also.
Because the ecosystem of the automotive industry is not complete without the last nut and bolt coming from the tier 4 supplier. Maybe somewhere in Rohtak,
Ludhiana,
So one of course the government did a great thing by making the 45 days payment term mandatory for the MSMEs, right?
Right.
We have to pay them within 45 days so that their cash flows are not affected. Second, the situation, especially after pandemic, during pandemic, was more terrible at their end. They just did not know where to run. So to that extent, that hand holding is something which has hit us also. Probably we also need to do more as tier 1s, right? And respond the way customers are responding to us. So that is something which is there. But of course, all of this needs to be taken care in future.
Well, the automobile industry particularly more hit than quite a few other industries.
Well, it's also an industry on a roller coaster. We have been on a high like never before, and probably we have registered the sales numbers that we were not recording even pre-COVID, right?
That's right. Surprising.
So it's been a mixed bag. It's been a mixed bag. Financially, we cannot complain. I think the two V-shaped recoveries have been good to us. But at the same point of time, thrown with enormous challenges is something which has like really taken a toll.
Interesting time, as they say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting,
Great,
Manoj.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor
Thank
Manoj.
you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And
Thank
A
you.
nice
it was
afternoon.
indeed, it was a nice interaction.
It was a
And
pleasure.
we'll
Thank
stay
you.
connected,
Thank you
right,
very
sir?
much.
And
We
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Right, Lawrence
thank
G.
you.
Professor Manoj.
Lawrence
Right,
G,
Lawrence
bye-bye.
बहुत धन्यवाद चल मिलेंगे
And so he has started and showing the gesture as a Indians and a namaste.
No, he's using word. He says shukriya. He used the word shukriya, kal milenge. So he's learning very fast.
we hope to see India and Australia play the finals in the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
We have to deal with Pakistan tomorrow first. So we'll do that.
We're accelerating into the future.
All right.
okay,
Thank you.
lovely,
Thank you, gents.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Nice
you,
to meet you
Bala.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Akil ji. Thank you. Thank you, Malwa ji. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.